Hello everyone, my name is Oleg and I'll be your chairperson for the committee of LIBE in Gothenburg 2018. And this is the first video in the so-called topic overview block. For this session, the board has decided to move away from the traditional topic overview, which is just the text with the needed information, to this sort of blog where first of all this video will be uploaded and then hopefully some other information from me, some relevant links, statistics, so on, will be available for you. So without further ado, let's just dive into the topic. LIBE, Hope and Homes for Children. With over 1 million children growing up in institutional care in Central and Eastern Europe, how should the EU assist member states in dismantling orphanage-based care systems and facilitating adoption process? So right off the bat, you might ask, why is this issue important? Why should we care about this in the first place? Well, there are good reasons for this. First of all, the institutional care in Europe, in the European Union, is very much overused. As mentioned in the topic itself, there are more than 1 million children growing up in these facilities, and in some member states the numbers are pretty staggering. You think, first of all, of Central or Eastern Europe, but even in countries like Belgium, for example, is an interesting example, the numbers are pretty high. Let's look at Bulgaria, for instance. The number of children under the age of 3 in Bulgaria growing up in institutional care facilities is 69 for every 10,000 children. So out of 10,000 children under the age of 3, 69 grow up in such facilities. Might not seem like a lot in the first place, but if you combine and take sort of large the overall number of these children, it's a pretty high number. In fact, it's a higher number than some of the non-EU countries in Eastern Europe, such as Ukraine or Serbia. So it's a huge problem. But you might ask, why is it bad? Why should we care about it? Well, scientists and doctors agree that growing up in institutional care is actually quite damaging for children. First of all, they're often living in large numbers with only limited number of staff being able to care for them, which leads that they lack this one-to-one care and love and attention that child absolutely needs in the early stage of development, especially under the age of 3. Moreover, due to some perhaps again lack of staff and funding, these children have limited access to education, which leaves them pretty much unprepared for surviving in the outside world. They have no means of finding a job or shaping their lives, and that often leads to them being on the streets, addicted to drugs or alcohol, or engaged into some criminal activities, which then leads to further problems as they grow up, and if they have children without stable financial income, might end up having to give up their children to such institutional facilities again, and this vicious circle of poverty remains and creates very, very huge problems. Moreover, it has been proven that children growing up in such institutions and staying there for extensive periods of time, especially until they grow up and be actual adults, age of 18, have very serious difficulties reintegrating into society after living there for so long, making friends or any kind of meaningful social relations at all. So again, makes their life after the care facility even harder. So yeah, as I mentioned, the system itself is pretty damaging to children, and with such high numbers of children living in these facilities, it is a big problem indeed. So now let's take a look at some of the key actors and what has they been dealing with so far. There are many relevant non-governmental organizations, NGOs, that have been dealing with this issue. For example, Opening Doors for Europe's Children is one of the largest ones. It aims to ensure the necessary care and protection of children by closing down institutional care facilities and by promoting a transition from institutional to family or community-based care, so-called deinstitutionalization. Other organizations include sort of larger ones like UNICEF, Eurochild, or International Federation of Educative Communities, the European branch of this organization. They have also other aims and protect children's rights in general, but also deal very much with this issue in particular. Second is the member states, who are obviously care for their citizens and interested in bringing up healthy, developed children who will hopefully become functioning members of society. And despite many member states having made pledges, as I will mention later on, to move away from institutional care and introduce other types of care facilities, it still often remains the easiest and the cheapest solution for them. So for countries that have some economic problems, this unfortunately still remains pretty much the only way they can deal with this issue. Third is the parents that are important actors in this situation as well. They're often forced to give up their children to institutional care, especially when they're experiencing financial problems. And without functioning social support system, it often remains the only possible solution for them. In fact, it's very important to note that despite this ongoing myth that most children living in such institutions are orphans without living parents, only 4% of children do not have living parents. 96 of them at least have one living biological parent who is unfortunately not able to care for them. So yeah, let's take a look at what has been already done to eradicate this problem. And as I mentioned before, UNICEF is one of the organizations dealing with this issue, and United Nations in general has been active. One of the most important documents is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. It outlines the most basic rights of children, such as the right to education, health services, adequate standard of living. But more importantly for us, it requires that states help during and facilitate the process of adoption, making sure that the best interests of a child are protected. So it does not only say that states should try as much as they can to find families for these children, but also obliges them to make sure that the rights of children are protected and these adopting parents meet all the criteria and standards for a child to grow up in normal conditions. Furthermore, the Opening Doors for Europe's Children project, the one I already mentioned, is cooperating with other NGOs and member states and has already achieved quite a lot in this area. For example, in Romania, they managed to cooperate with the state, and Romania actually made a pledge to close all institutional care facilities by 2021 and to use EU funds to actually close this institution. Instead, what they have been doing before is to use EU funds to keep them running, which is a huge change. And already more than 90,000 children have been moved from institutional care over the past 15 years, which is a huge achievement, especially for a state like Romania, which had loads of problems in this issue in the past and still unfortunately does. So where does it leave us? Where can we take it from there? Let's look at some possible solutions. Certain alternatives to institutional care exist and have already been proven to be a lot more effective. The most obvious of them is, of course, adoption or care in a non-related family, so-called foster care, where the carers do not really become the legal guardians and carers of the child and are often reimbursed for their work by the state. International adoption has also been used as an alternative, especially for countries that experience some economic problems and where adults' parents are not able to afford to care for a child. However, the aforementioned UN Convention actually recommends this as only a last resort and does not recommend it as a regular practice to deal with this issue. Finally, the preventive actions are not only possible but very much needed. Social support for young or economically vulnerable parents can prevent child neglect in the first place. Furthermore, even little things like promotion of contraceptives, which can prevent many unwanted pregnancies. Though it may seem like a thing of the past in Europe, it can actually still make a lot of difference, especially in rural communities or communities that have strong ties to religion, to church, for example, in Poland. Well, this is pretty much it for now. A very short introduction to the topic. Go further, research on your own, make some use of the articles which will hopefully be sent to you in the future. And I am very much looking forward to see all of you in Gothenburg. Goodbye.